What's good, everybody? As we all know, Islam Makhachev won this weekend against Ian Garry. He broke the Anderson Silva streak. He is now on a 17-fight win streak, beating Ian Garry, who was the deserving #1 contender, had beat Carlos Prates, had beat Belal Muhammad, right? Had a really close fight with Shavkat, and did it in, somewhat impressive fashion. A lot of people called it boring, but this is what it is with a guy that you're not gonna finish, right? Ian Garry is really hard to finish. A guy you're not gonna finish. What you have to do is win these 48-47 decisions, right? He was holding him down. I think he dropped the third and fourth rounds, and in the fifth round he locked in, got the back control, and was able to ride out the rest of the round. It was somewhat of a boring performance outside of the few exciting moments in round 2, but it's what you got to do against a guy like Ian Garry. And now I'm here to talk about the next matchup for Islam Makhachev, and I think honestly it's looking good, man. It's looking really good for Islam. It's going to be good, my brother. It's going to be good for Islam Makhachev in his next matchup because I do think that will be Carlos Prates. I think Carlos Prates deserves the next shot. A lot of people are calling for Morales, but of course Morales' only good win is over Sean Brady. Some people who are sick in the head like myself are calling for Shavkat Rakhmonov to come back and get a title shot. But CP is the next contender, right? I mean, a couple fights ago, he had a really good fight with Ian Garry, where Ian did win 4 out of the 5 rounds, but he showed in that 5th round that he has finishing power, and he can keep it up and keep up with these guys and not get finished by these guys that grapple, right? He fought Leon Edwards, knocked him out in the 2nd round after showing how he defended the grappling, how he defended, all the submissions in the 1st round. And lastly, the dismantling of JDM. He was able to knock out JDM, I think first guy to knock JDM out in his professional career, if I'm not wrong. Just an impressive run. He's not the most well-fit contender to fight Islam Makhachev, as we're going to get into, but he's definitely the guy that deserves it the most. Definitely over Morales, over Shavkat, over the Ian Garry rematch. I hope we never see that shit ever again. So what's the Carlos Prates path to victory? So for Carlos Prates, we saw in that Leon Edwards fight, he was taken down relatively at will. He got back control, and in that JDM fight, JDM did actually manage, to get his hands on him and get him down in the 1st round. And JDM, what he was able to do is kind of talk his way out of the situation. If you guys remember those fights, the post-fight interviews, the press conferences, both fighters mentioned, JDM, Leon Edwards, and Carlos Prates, they mentioned talking. In there, when Leon Edwards got a hold of him, he was emoting, he was, he was talking to him like, oh man, so we're grappling now. JDM grappled him, and he was like, oh, you're scared of me, you're scared. And JDM was like, no man, I'm just a well-rounded fighter. The path to victory for Carlos Prates would be finding some bullshit way to keep the fight on the feet. Because, of course, on the feet, he has more than enough power to knock Islam out. I believe this might be the hardest hitting welterweight we've ever, seen in this division. But the issue is, I don't think he's going to be able to keep this fight on the feet. This fight, what are you going to tell Islam to keep, it's literally going to be you and your skills against Islam Makhachev, because there's nothing you can say to Islam to make him deviate from the game plan. This is not Joel Alvarez, all right? Someone that doesn't follow the game plan. Islam Makhachev is one of those fighters that's going to follow his game plan without a doubt, to the T and execute perfectly. So, how does this fight actually go? Analyzing the past Carlos Prates fights, we saw a couple patterns that I think will be very prevalent in this Islam versus Prates matchup. So, in the Ian Garry fight, we saw whether Carlos Prates' hands were up or whether they were down, Ian Garry was always able to draw out a reaction, either by, we see in this picture here, timing the jab to get under for the takedown, or simply just waiting at a time where Carlos Prates raises his guard, whether it be to block a feint of Ian Garry's jab, a 1-2, a head kick, whatever. Choosing one of these moments where Carlos Prates elevates his hands away from his hips to go down and shoot for a takedown. Single leg, double leg, whatever. And we saw with I think is going to be an issue in this Makhachev fight, that Carlos Prates accepted bottom position. Even if it was only for a little bit against Ian Garry, he accepted that bottom position for a while. And that's something, honestly, I think you can't afford against Islam Makhachev. He's going to posture, he's going to ground and pound, he's going to transition into the harder and more dominant positions, and he's going to put you in situations where you're not going to be able to get out. Another thing we saw is that in the later rounds, in a fight that included a lot of scrambles, the Ian Garry and Carlos Prates fight, in a fight where there were takedowns involved, where Ian Garry was throwing lots of high kicks, hitting the guard of Carlos Prates is something that's affected him, throwing a lot of leg kicks. We saw Carlos Prates slow down. In part, could be due to his smoking cardio, man. You know how it is. If you guys have ever smoked or, done any sort of substances before you train, that shit fucks with your performance, man. And I think getting to these later rounds, if you've been getting hugged and grappled by Islam Makhachev for the first 4 rounds of your fight, you're not going to have that energy. We saw 30 seconds left in the Ian Garry fight. He had Ian Garry hurt, right? He defended a takedown. He was able to scramble, end up on top. And he just hit him with I think it was 2 or 3 good shots that really rocked Ian. But he wasn't able to follow up. Ian, crawled up to the cage, grabbed the fence a little bit, and he was there. And Carlos Prates was kind of just hugging him. He wasn't opening up. He wasn't using, he was mouth breathing super hard, and he couldn't get it done. He couldn't get that finishing sequence. So if we see a Prates KO, unless it's a one-shot hitter quitter, he hits a knee, he times a knee really well on an Islam takedown, which could happen. These Muay Thai guys are super, super elite in this department. But unless we see something like that, getting into the later rounds is going to be a real struggle for Carlos Prates. And lastly, we saw in the Leon Edwards fights, in the clinch and in the back takes against the fence, 2 positions that we've seen so much with Islam Makhachev. We saw it in the JDM fight. We saw it just this weekend with the Ian Garry fight. These were 2 positions where Carlos Prates was kind of stationary. Right in the clinch, he was able to reverse. He was able to threaten with some knees, with some elbows off the break. Typical Muay Thai stuff. But in reality, he was really stationary and kind of riding out the rounds. He was waiting, okay, next round, we're going to start on the feet. That's when I get my shot. And against Leon Edwards, because Leon Edwards didn't follow his game plan, that's what happened. But you were trending towards a Leon Edwards, 30-27 decision, just smudging Carlos Prates for 3 rounds because Carlos Prates was not getting out of these positions. Now, can Carlos Prates improve? Can he get better between however long has been since his last fight and his fight with Islam Makhachev? Of course, right? These are fighters. They're professional fighters. This is all they do. Maybe Carlos Prates, goes out and parties a little bit. But he can definitely get better. I just think he will not. I think what is inevitable in this fight is that Islam wins a sort of boring fight by decision because he has all the tools we've seen Carlos Prates struggle with, even in the striking. Right? Carlos Prates, you can't say he struggles with much in the striking because he's a savant. He's really good. He's great, don't get me wrong. But he struggles with the low kicks because he does tend to be pretty heavy on his, he loves to use his long-ass reach by leaning forward on his front leg. And that makes him susceptible to leg kicks. And also, we've seen that Ian Garry fight, how he struggles against head kicks. On the guard, whatever, anything like that gets his hands moving. I think Islam has the perfect style, even at welterweight, even when these guys are longer, even if Carlos Prates hits 10 million times harder than Ian Garry, 10 million times harder than Islam. He has a style to beat him. The wrestling is going to be way stickier than Ian Garry's wrestling. The fence work is going to be so much worse and so much more devastating than the Leon Edwards fence work. And I think this is going to be an easy legacy win for Islam Makhachev. It's one of those wins like that Khabib versus Dustin Poirier wins, right? It's going to be one of those wins that just in retrospect, you think, okay, he had the perfect style to beat him, but it's still a good win because this guy was taking out everyone else in the division. And honestly, I want to see Prates versus Morales before this fight happens. Islam is saying he wants to fight before the end of the year. I don't know, my brother. It's August. I don't know if we're going to get to see that because I know he didn't take that much damage. He has to see if his nose is broken, but I'd be wary. I wouldn't come back by the end of the year if I was Islam. You don't want to get your shit busted open by Carlos Prates, but it is what it is. I think Islam by decision would be the easy pick here. I think if you're a UFC fan, if you've watched tape on any of these fighters, if you've watched any fight in the last 5 years of these guys, honestly, it is what it is. I think this is the only outcome that you can reliably bet on. Can there be a fluke? For sure. Right? We can't get Islam winning by flying triangle submission. We can get Carlos Prates spinning heel kick KO. Right? That can happen. I'm not picking that shit. Islam by decision. Thank you guys for watching. Quick little video today. What do you guys think about this matchup, man? This is a very early prediction. Who knows if this is going to get made. We might get Carlos Prates versus Michael Morales. We might get, Shavkat Rakhmonov coming back, my GOAT. But yeah, man, let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to go call my homie. Ciao, ciao.